Hey guys, Felwinters here, bringing you another Destiny 2 video. In today's video, we're going to be tackling what I consider the most feared perk by Bungie on weapons. Now, that's kind of a loaded title, but what I mean by that is a perk that has an effect that they are, in fact, scared of us having too much of. And in this case, obviously the perk in question is going to be Thresh. Now, Thresh itself is a pretty lackluster perk. It gives a very minor amount of super energy on weapon kill, but that's all it needs to be for it to be something that is feared. How many times in the past, whether it be Ursa Furiosa, Phoenix Protocol, a Dynamo glitch where you can use your class ability infinitely to get your super energy back instantly, or even recently with Strand where you could use the grapple melee in combination with Ashes to Asset and Hands On, along with heavy-handed and firepower all at the same time to give you under 1 minute supers. Bungie is clearly afraid of this effect in general, and has nerfed it several times. Whenever we get to a point where we can super repeatedly and continuously, chaining one into the next in less than a minute's time, they always end up having to nerf such an effect in the game. And Thresh is one of the things that flies under the radar because it gives such a small amount of super energy. But what if it gave more? Or what if the meta of super shifted in such a way that a super being cast even just a minute or 2 minutes quicker was actually a big deal? For example, in a lot of raid fights, there's usually enough window between DPS phases that you will get your super back. However, in some encounters, the DPS phases are so fast in between each other and there's not very much ad density in between the phases, there's not quite enough time to build that super again, and that can be quite a big deal. For example, in King's Fall, on War Priest specifically, if I was the first well, I would not always guaranteedly have my second well ready when the next DPS phase started. Thus, I crafted a enhanced Thresh submission just for that situation, because not having a super when it is critically needed in a fight is an invitation for death. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's talk about what Thresh actually does. So at base, on a heavy weapon or on a primary weapon, it gives 1% super energy per kill. On a special weapon, it gives 2%, which may not sound like a big deal, but trust me, we'll get there. The enhanced version, very interesting, although not sounding so, but it is in context of other enhanced perks, is 1.33% for primary and heavy weapons and 2.5% for special weapons. Again, very small. However, in the vacuum of enhanced perks, which are typically a 5 to 10% increase, a 33 or 25% increase on these Thresh perks is actually quite substantial. And it's probably the reason that Thresh is fairly rare on most weapons that are craftable. There is still not, even in Season 21, an energy primary weapon that is craftable with Thresh to get that enhanced super generation. And even in special weapons in energy category, there's only 3, I believe, 2 glaives and Prodigal Return, the grenade launcher. Prodigal Return is probably the best Thresh weapon that we currently have, just because of its combination with Volt Shot, allowing you to AoE targets and gain tons of super energy back. But ultimately, I think this perk is very interesting, specifically because if they buffed it in any way, it would be downright broken. Or if the sandbox shifted in such a way that it was more useful, it would be broken. For example, if they introduced more Aggro Scepter type weapons, weapons that consume your super energy to gain a supercharged effect, then Thresh can be a fantastic weapon perk. In fact, in my Aggro Scepter video that I posted last week, I was trying to find an energy Thresh weapon to pair with it, but as of right now, none of them exist. You could imagine for yourself what a super consuming weapon would look like if we had Thresh on another weapon to give that thing fuel for its supercharged form. I think Thresh in a sandbox where we had other exotics that had super consuming effects for charged up modes is a very interesting perk. We need one in the energy slot. We need one in the heavy slot to complement Aggro Scepter in the kinetic slot. And again, the design space is open, and I hope they do fill it over at Bungie with weapons that can complement this, and then also add more craftable Thresh weapons to play with them as well. Because, again, with Aggro Scepter as my main example, you realistically can't use a special energy weapon because Aggro Scepter is so demanding when it comes to its special ammo. I also think that if we had more homogenized supers, so for example, Stasis and Strand currently only have the 1 super available per subclass, which is fine, but if we added to that with a second super that was more DPS focused, one-shot focused, like Needlestorm is, of course, but most of the others are roaming supers, or Silence and Squall is not really a DPS super. If suddenly they had that, being able to recharge that quickly with a Thresh-like perk can mean that you can use this a lot more often and it gives you that insurance to know that if you pop your super in this room on this encounter, you're still going to have it for the next room and the next encounter the next time you need it, because that Thresh is providing the extra super energy required to get that super back. And also on top of that, we have the PvP implications of Thresh, which of course, it's the most win more perk in the game, because if you're already able to go on kill streaks, if you're already able to kill chain, get those early kills going, you're going to be the first one to a super, and that can totally change the round of a trials match. It can swing a comp game. It can allow you to get more supers than you otherwise would in an Iron Banner match, wherever it is, but it's only if you're good enough to actually make it work. It's not free. And again, like, it's held in check by the fact that the energy given is so minute, but a tiny buff, and this perk would be S tier. And it's really interesting how this thing walks a tightrope between being absolutely broken and being completely overshadowed by other perks, which is where it is right now, unfortunately. I'm hoping the sandbox shifts a little bit, especially with the types of supers available. Currently, Strand and Stasis are still stuck with just one super. This is almost a second video in and of itself, but the idea of giving them multiple supers, potentially a DPS super that we can use in raid fights, or even in Nightfalls where we can use supers to routinely blow up champions without having to burn heavy ammo, because one of the things that we can guarantee throughout a strike or raid encounter is that we are going to get our abilities back. We cannot guarantee that outside of course, like Aeons, or if there's an artifact mod. We can't guarantee necessarily that we're always going to have a supply of heavy ammo, but we can definitely guarantee that we're going to get our super back. Again, I want to live in the sandbox where Thresh is meta relevant, but for that to happen, Bungie needs to give us just a little bit more, maybe not in a direct buff to Thresh, because I understand that obviously, if all of a sudden it started giving 5%, 10%, it would be ridiculous. 10 kills and boom, you have your super back. You could kill an entire wave of Thrall and be ready to go again with another Thunder Crash, another Nova Bomb. And I understand why that's a problem. But at the same time, I feel like there are other ways that we can utilize our super, whether it be alternative supers or weapons that consume the supers or something, to make Thresh more appealing as a perk without making it completely busted. With all that being said, guys, I think I've said my piece on Thresh. I thought this was just a really interesting topic to bat around. Again, this perk is just so underutilized. No one really thinks about it. I completely understand in its current state it just doesn't have a place. But at the same time, I think it's a good sleeper option for certain builds, especially this season in particular, where we have hard-hitting arc supers like Thunder Crash and Gathering Storm, which we can buff with the new artifact perk Thunderous Retort, as well as their class-specific exotics Curus of the Falling Star and Star Eater Scales. And getting those supers up more often is interesting, particularly in this season. With all that being said, I think that's going to be it for this video. This is Felwinter signing out, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.